What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. And this is the segment on my channel where I watch every film in A24's catalog from the first film that they produced all the way up until whenever I get current. In today's film, I cannot say that I'm going to be able to have a lot to talk about with this because it's a subject I didn't really care all that much for, and it's a documentary about the band Oasis. And honestly, other than the hits, I've never really been interested enough in Oasis music to kind of take a deep dive into the band. Their music, I mean, their hits are all right. They're not anything terrible, but it's never been really all that interesting enough for me to want to jump into one of their albums. And earlier in the segment on my channel, the A24 Archive, I watched the documentary about Amy Winehouse, and I did not know anything really about Amy Winehouse other than her tragic death, and I didn't really know a whole lot of her music, and the documentary was incredibly informative, really well put together, and actually kind of put me onto her music and made me want to explore her discography more and kind of learn more about her as a person. And I was hoping that this documentary would do the same thing for me, and the movie I'm going to be talking about today is Supersonic. Supersonic is directed by Mat Whitecross. Supersonic charts the meteoric rise of Oasis from the council estates of Manchester to some of the biggest concerts of all time in just 3 short years. This palpable, raw, and moving film shines a light on one of the most genre and generation-defining British bands that has ever existed, and features candid new interviews with Noel and Liam Gallagher, their mother, and members of the band and road crew. So this is one of those movies that I feel like is obviously made for people who love the band Oasis, and not necessarily a documentary for people who know virtually nothing about their music and want to try to get into their music. My initial thoughts are, I found this documentary incredibly annoying. I found it really grating and obnoxious. I didn't think any of the interviews were all that interesting. I wasn't really a huge fan of the way the documentary was edited, where it's all narrated over footage. You don't really get any sort of like talking head shots. It's really just like band members talking over concert footage, and their names would pop up at the bottom. And honestly, with the thick accents, there was times where, thank goodness, there were subtitles because I would have been 100% lost. And it really just kind of takes us on the journey of the band's formation and their rise to stardom and then their falling out. And honestly, the problem that I have with this is the guys in the band, especially Noel and Liam, the brothers, are incredibly obnoxious individuals. One of them is more disliked than the other one. I'm not 100% sure. I know the documentary talked about the tension created between the two of them. I just found both of them to be really full of themselves and kind of annoying every time they would go off on a tangent about how they're the greatest band in the world. And I'm just like, I disagree with that statement, and honestly, like, if you're pompous enough to think that, like, whatever. But I wasn't really all that enthralled with the documentary and hearing about their rise to stardom. I would have found it a lot more interesting if there were more outsider perspective interviews and kind of like the demise of the band and things like that. But really, most of it just felt kind of like a hangout documentary where it's like, okay, we're going to tell a story about this one specific show or this one specific set of circumstances. I thought the best moments were like when they interviewed their mother and like getting a little bit of background as them early on and their interest in music. That was all kind of interesting, but once the documentary hit about the 45-50 minute mark, which this thing almost pushes 2 hours, I was just so checked out by the middle point of the documentary. I really just didn't care all that much about anything that was going on, because unlike the Amy Winehouse documentary, which was fascinating because it examined her personality, the people surrounding her, the decisions that she made regarding those other people, and just kind of how they push and pulled at her life, this really isn't all that interesting. It just seems like a couple of guys who had some really great hits and some music that people love that they didn't know how to handle their shit, and they made it fall apart. Similarly to a lot of other bands that I genuinely do love, like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, and bands that have kind of separated over issues that they have with one another. And I've seen that even in modern bands that I love to this day. It would be different if it was music that I was passionate about and really cared about, but Oasis has just never been a band for me. And I did watch the whole documentary because, like I said, I'm watching every A24 film from start to finish, not skipping over them. Even if there's something like this that caters to a very specific audience, I'm going to sit down watch it from start to finish, and give it my open and honest opinion. And I think this is a movie that if you are a fan of the band of Oasis, you're probably going to have fun seeing those behind the scenes footage, some concert things, maybe a couple little snippets of information that you didn't know beforehand. But for someone like me who didn't really care about their music, wasn't really invested in it didn't make me want to seek out their music more, didn't really give me any information about them more than I already knew, and I feel like I could have figured out everything I learned in this documentary from a quick Google search. So have you seen Supersonic? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this was really bland and boring. I'm not invested in the band whatsoever, so I didn't really care about what I was watching, and I would rather watch most of the other stuff in A24's catalog than this movie. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.